remaining developing countries, including most notably Bolivia. And now it looks like it's going to pass and be adopted by the World Health Organization on Monday or Tuesday. So my paper had been about how to resolve this unresolvable conflict. So now it's about whether or not I like the resolution, but I've only had so much time to work through it. But here we go. I'm going to start by working through 3 levels of the controversy. One is what was the nature of the stalemate prior to the 2009 H1N1 experience. Then, immediately after that, my thesis here is that things got worse, that the divide between developing nations and wealthy nations was larger. And the third, then, is the nature of the current resolution. And I'm going to dissect that a bit to analyze what I think are the political priorities that ended up taking control. So, pre-H1N1, the stalemate was that developing nations were, their proposal would require any pharmaceutical company receiving biological material through the network to commit to donating 10% of their vaccine production to the World Health Organization and to sell their intellectual property rights at cost to developing nations as those nations sought to produce their own vaccine. Wealthy nations in response said, no commitments. We'll help you, don't worry, it'll all be okay. Then came the 2009 H1N1 experience, and here's what we learned. Production capacity is insufficient. Now, there had been great gains in our production capacity for pandemic influenza vaccine made since 2005. But the Global Action Plan had been for sufficient production capacity such that after 6 months from the time a novel strain is identified, we could have 2 million doses. That was the goal for 2011. And by 2016, the goal is 6 months after the identification of a novel influenza strain, we'd be able to produce 6.7 billion doses. In reality, we were able to produce 500 million doses, which was way better than 2005, but still well short of what our goal was. We also learned that developed nations didn't come to the aid of developing nations because of political pressure to retain the pandemic vaccine that they had purchased for fear that they wouldn't be able to provide for domestic demands. So this leads us to the post-H1N1 stalemate. And what happens is that developing nations increase their demands substantially.